his treatment of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and a 2016 Trump Tower meeting between campaign officials and Russians offering dirt on Hillary Clinton. But they also touch on the president's businesses. Any discussions with his longtime personal lawyer, Michael D. Cohen, about a Moscow real estate deal, whether the president knew of any attempt by Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to set up a back channel to Russia during the transition, any contacts he had with Roger Stone Jr., a longtime advisor who claimed to have inside information about Democratic email hackings, and what happened during Mr. Trump's 2013 trip to Moscow for the Miss Universe pageant. Again, that is the reporting from the New York Times, breaking tonight. With me now is Michael Zeldin, John Dean, and General Michael Hayden. General Hayden, first of all, what do you make of, I mean, interesting that these were recently provided to President Trump's lawyers, this list of questions. They have now leaked out to the New York Times.
Yeah. So, tied to our earlier conversation, I talked about our being a fractured society, kind of in a post-truth world. We've got issues of our own. And now this just illustrates, Anderson, you have a foreign adversary coming in over the top very skillfully in terms of the Russians, taking advantage and worsening the fissures that we already have in our society. And now you've got the special counsel trying to sort this out. Number one, what did they do? And he's made some progress with regard to Russian activity. And now how did the Russian activity relate to the Trump campaign and the Trump administration?
Michael Zeldin, I'm just wondering from a legal standpoint, as a former prosecutor, I just want to tell you, here are some of the questions that the New York Times has gotten that Mueller wants to ask. What did you know about phone calls that Mr. Flynn made with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, in late December 2016? What did you know about Sally Yates's meetings about Mr. Flynn? How was the decision made to fire Mr. Flynn on February 13th, 2017? I'm just wondering what you make of what we're just now learning, Michael.
Well, it seems that what we are learning is that, contrary to earlier reporting, Mueller's interest in the president and the president's deposition, however that takes place, falls fully within the full scope of his mandate. It is not going to be a limited interview. It is going to be relating to the question of the interference, the counterintelligence investigation, and matters that arise out of it, including obstruction of justice. And so these questions point to the broad areas of interest that Mueller has as they relate to each of the 4 points within his mandate: counterintelligence, matters that arise out of it, obstruction of justice, and coordination and conspiracy, the so-called collusion aspect of it. And this is what you would have expected from Mueller all along. So we talked about this earlier, Anderson, that I was skeptical that Mueller was going to wrap up this investigation with multi-reports, the first one coming on obstruction of justice. It didn't make sense to me as a prosecutor and former independent counsel. And so I think that these questions sort of speak to the breadth of Mueller's interests and the fact that I think we are not yet near the end of this investigation.
Yeah, I just want to read our viewers some of the other questions from this Times article. After the resignations, what efforts were made to reach out to Mr. Flynn about seeking immunity or possible pardon? Another one, regarding the decision to fire Mr. Comey, when was it made? Why? Who played a role? What is the reason for your continued criticism of Mr. Comey and his former deputy, Andrew G. McCabe? Those are just some of the questions, more than 4 dozen, we are told, that Robert Mueller would like to ask President Trump. Michael, the fact that this leaked out, and again, this was recently provided, according to the New York Times, to President Trump's lawyers. So it either leaked out from someone on that end or someone on the special counsel's end. It doesn't seem like a lot has been leaking out from that end. What do you make of the fact that this has leaked out and now been published?
Well, it strikes me that somebody within the White House, most likely in the White House counsel's office, may be leaking this information. We saw a leak earlier about the president having asked White House counsel McGahn to go to Rosenstein, to have Rosenstein fire Mueller. I thought, in looking at that article, that had to come from the White House counsel's office itself. Similarly, as I look at this and think, where might be the source of this? And this is speculation, and I don't mean to impugn anybody's reputation, and I'm not naming anyone by name by any stretch. It seems that that's the most likely point of exit about this information, the White House counsel's office.
General Hayden, does it hurt the Mueller investigation that these questions are out there? Couldn't the president say, well, look, these questions are out here. I can now just I can answer these in writing, since they're already out
Well,
there?
obviously, the president would know what the questions were based upon the storyline we know. You could see this being an attempt by the White House to undercut once again the legitimacy of the Mueller investigation, pointing the finger at them that they're doing this for political purposes. You know, what really strikes me, you know you've got two lawyers to give the legal point of view here, but the broader kind of strategic point of view, Anderson, the points of tension between this administration and the broader American society have been with law, justice, intelligence, scholarship, and journalism. And what do all of those have in common? They're fact-based, they're data-based, they're based on evidence. So this is just one more example of what I tried to point out in the book of how evidence-based institutions are a bit under siege in this post-truth world.
More questions from the article. I just want to read to our viewers. When did you become aware of the Trump Tower meeting, the June meeting with Donald Trump Jr.? What involvement did you have in the communication strategy, including the release of Donald Trump Jr.'s emails? What communication did you have with Michael D. Cohen, Felix Sater, and others, including foreign nationals, about Russian real estate developments during the campaign? What discussions did you have during the campaign regarding Russian sanctions? During the campaign, what did you know about Russian hacking, use of social media, or other acts aimed at the campaign? What did you know about communication between Roger Stone, his associates, Julian Assange, or WikiLeaks? Also joining me now on the phone is John Dean. I believe we have Jeff Zeleny also standing by at the White House. John Dean, as you look at these questions being asked, is there something that jumps out at you?
The very fact that the questions are out there is my first reaction, suggesting that it could be an act of obstruction just to have released these questions.
How so? How would that be obstruction?
Well, to try to somehow disrupt the flow of information, the tipping off a witness in advance to what the question was going to be. And listening to you're reading the questions and I'm scanning them, it appears to me more that these are questions somebody wrote down after listening to someone else than necessarily the questions that were designed by the prosecutors.
You think the wording is not exact as they might be from a prosecutor?
Yes, I do.
What makes you think that? Just how the sentences are phrased?
Exactly. It's sort of mechanical. It sounds like it could have come out of a discussion with the prosecutors.
Michael Zeldin, as a former prosecutor, do you agree with that?
Well, I think these are not specific questions as you might get in, sort of interrogatories, written interrogatories, which are formal questions put in question form. I think that John is probably more right than less, as always, that these are probably more topic sentences, areas of inquiry than they are specific questions that they want specific answers to, but rather we want to talk to you about the topic of communications around the June 9th meeting. We want to talk to you about the topic of Roger Stone's knowledge of WikiLeaks. We want to talk to you about the topic of your counterintelligence inquiries, etc.
So that's an important point, because if the president knew exactly the questions as worded, one might be able to give very precise answers and leave it at that. If these are just general topic areas and there's more possible questions within these topic areas, that then leaves more opportunity for a free-floating, free-form, rambling answer or several answers.
Sure. It gives you the opportunity to have follow-up questions. When you ask, what was your communication strategy around the June 9th meeting? Well, that asks a whole host of questions just within that topic. What happened on Air Force One? How did that statement get written? Who was involved in the writing of the statement? What did Hope Hicks mean when she said these emails will never see the light of day? How did it come to pass that Jay Sekulow went on television and said he had nothing to do, the president had nothing to do with the writing of that statement, which turned out to be untrue? Those are all subsumed within that one topic sentence of tell us about your communication strategy.
That's interesting. I want to bring in Jeff Zeleny from the White House as well. Jeff, what exactly is the status of the president sitting for an interview with Bob Mueller's team? Do we know? And I wonder how this might affect it one way or the other.
Well, Anderson, that has been the question hanging over this White House for weeks and months, in fact. The last time the president has addressed this, he said he did indeed want to sit down with Bob Mueller. Of course, that has been at the heart of all of the changing lawyers, the will he or won't he. So we don't know the answer if he actually will go through with it. A lot of his attorneys have advised him it would be, the wrong thing to do. But Anderson, when I go through these questions and to look at them, there's nothing in here that's a surprise. Of course, like these are an outline, but what this is, it's just connecting the dots of really what's happened over the last year, particularly again on that Air Force One flight from Germany back to the U.S. I was the pool reporter on that flight, remember it well. We didn't know at the time what was happening, but in the days after, it became clear that that meeting was going on. So the president wouldn't be surprised by anything that is in this list of questions here. The question is, would he give a consistent answer to what many of his advisors have already done, who have already sat down with Bob Mueller? So that is at the root of all of this here. So we don't know the answer if he will ultimately sit down. It's one of the reasons that Rudy Giuliani is one of the new lawyers on his team. He is supposed to be negotiating something like this, but it does seem to me that this was leaked by someone on the president or the White House's side, not certainly the special counsel.
Also joining me on the phone is Ann Milgram, former federal prosecutor and New Jersey Attorney General. Ann, what jumps out at you at this point?
I mean, I have a lot of the same reactions. I think that the areas are not surprising, the sort of areas of inquiry. And I also believe that there are a lot of opportunities for them to go deeper. I mean, these are just high-level areas. And so if they interview the president, he won't be surprised by the general areas, but they will have, I believe, a lot of questions underneath each of these sort of subheadings, and they'll go a lot deeper on all of them. And so, but it really does show us that the investigation still relates to there are serious questions about obstruction, about the firing of Mr. Comey, the firing of Mr. Flynn, questions about Jeff Sessions, and so it really, and also questions about the collusion aspect, and really that's a conspiracy question, but there are questions related to that, and so it's very broad and far-reaching. There's really nothing that's off the table, I think, in these questions.
It's interesting, General Hayden, if I'm doing an interview and I have 40 questions I want to ask somebody written down, that's a 2-hour interview just on the face of it. If there's not other follow-up questions, and it seems like the consensus is these are just broad topics with follow-up questions. If all these questions and others in these topics were asked, this is a lengthy interview.
Oh my God, yes. And the follow-on questions.
Right.
And keep in mind that Director Mueller probably thinks he knows the answers to all these.
Right.
And so when he puts that out, he's maybe learning a little bit more, but he's checking the answer